Yeah, well, it's actually EBRD, but Moroccans go.
Excuse me, I know we are starting late. How is your schedule? Do you have to leave sharp at 12, or can you stay with us till 12:15?
We have a meeting in this next room, in this building.
So it's okay.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
So maybe we have to go like 15 past or so.
Yes.
Thank you very much. How we go?
Sure.
Okay. Is there, do you have another microphone over there? Okay. So you share that and I share this.
Ok. Celui-là, c'est pour vous et moi.
Voilà, absolument.
Okay, I think we're going to start. Very good morning. Sorry for our delay, but I think you've all seen so far that the logistics here, they are a little bit unpredictable. So I'm very glad you found us and that you made it here. I have a fantastic panel today. I'm super excited about this because I have very, very versed people from the financial sector that have been doing really pioneering greening of the financial system for a long time. And I think we'll hear some very interesting perspectives from the banking side themselves, from financial institutions, also from a central bank perspective. If we're lucky, we're still missing Jean, so hopefully Jean will also join us shortly. He represents the NGFS, the network of the greening of the financial system, who also will give us a great perspective, working with many, many banks and particularly many, many central banks across all different types of countries, regions. And I will introduce you very briefly. First of all the way over there, my colleague, Francis Malige. He's our managing director, of course, for financial institutions at the EBRD. Then, I think I'm going to go this way. We have Mr. Brahim Benjelloun-Touimi. He's the CEO of Banque of Africa. Good morning. Thanks for coming. Then, in the middle, we have Mrs. Hasmik Ghahramanyan. I was very nervous to pronounce your last name. I hope I didn't do it completely wrongly. Who's a board member from the Central Bank of Armenia. And then, of course, right to my side, we have Mr. Hakan, who's the CEO of Denizbank in Turkey. So I think I'm in the best possible company, and I think we would like to start getting a little bit, I think, first the perspectives from the banks themselves. So we're talking about how can we green the financial system, how can we do more to finance the green transition, and we all know that the financial institutions are really the backbone of the real economy. And so I think I'm going to turn to you first, Hakan. You have, I think, given yourselves a sustainability roadmap, if I got that right, and I would love to hear why did you do that? What does it look like? What does it say? And what do you think is the role of a financial institution like yours in this quest for having a greener financial system overall?
Right. Thank you, Maya. I'm very glad to be here, by the way. It took some time to access to this room. And I am joking to my friends like it is even harder of Turkey to access to Europe. And now finally we get here. I'm quite happy. Now, Maya, as you well know, global warming and some of the disastrous potential events are very nearby. This October was the warmest October, and so is September, so is August and July. The highest temperature quotations were made in the last 4 months only. So while we were discussing the danger coming to our grandchildren, now we are discussing our children, not even children, ourselves. So the danger is very, very nearby. So there is no any other way other than first to transit and then to transform, or both, transit and transform, and adapt to this sustainability world, and it's inevitable. That's what we have to do. And as Denizbank, we're just experiencing the transition period to transform our business to adapt sustainable world. And our sustainability roadmap is responsible banking, that's what we call. Since the inception of our bank, this is 1997, EBRD has also witnessed our journey throughout this pace. And we always aimed to reach all segments of the society with the motto of leaving no one behind. And as you well know, actually, Turkey has almost 500 metric ton or half a megaton of carbon footprint. And the taxonomy is coming by in 2026. And the transition year will be 2025. Out of $255 billion of exports, I mean, more than $100 billion is from Europe. And like 103 billion to be precise. So unless we adopt and comply with full obedience to all these directives and rules, there's going to be taxation, and our comparative advantage will turn out to be comparative disadvantage this time. Proximity is our advantage, but if there is tax, our goods and services will be more expensive. That's why we have to neutralize, and our president the other day here in COP28 already sort of promised to go to zero carbon emission in the year 2030. And for that reason, actually, we do need to spend within the next 8 years, let's say, up until 2030, $320 billion. And if you prolong the pace up to 2040, we need to spend almost $500 billion. Can Turkey do that? Yes, Turkey's GDP is little over $1 trillion this year, as of this year. So 2% of our GDP to be spent will be fair enough to adapt and convert all our industries into sustainable world. Most of our carbon footprint is stemming from housing and some of the industries, heavy industries, which taps 22% of our overall industry. And they are inevitable, we have to do that. And we don't have any natural resources like fossil, oil and gas. But how shall we substitute it? We are in a good way. So far, in our energy mix, there is solar, hydroelectric, and wind farms taps almost 44% of our installed capacity. So with our sources, we have done a good job, I believe, so far. And we utilize, actually, our customers, we lended $7.2 billion since 2021 in the context of SMEs, agriculture, women in business, renewable energy, young entrepreneurs, and enterprises. And only 2024, our plan is to lend $3.4 billion of sustainable loans, out of which $1.5 billion will be all related to renewables. And Denizbank is #1 private bank in Turkey with 36% market share in financing micro farmers, small farmer families in micro lending. And we have niche sectors approach, and amongst them education, agribusiness, as I said, infrastructure, energy, tourism, SMEs. So this Denizbank received $3.4 billion funding under 50 agreements. I'm glad to say that my dear colleague Francis is with us. Almost $1 billion part of it is only with EBRD. And EBRD never let us walk alone. So they have a special part in our hearts. So moreover, EBRD gave the first loan in Turkey to Denizbank. #2, it was the first micro-lending agri-loan of EBRD ever lended to Denizbank. I'm very proud to say these statements, make these statements, showing our commitment to sustainability. And basically we adopted 4 pillars, 4 verticals I'm just finishing, in our strategy. First, assessing our loans from environment and social perspective. Not only project finance laws, but all laws. Because it's clear that our business is not a polluting business, but the lending, the industry, service sectors we are lending is at risk. So we have to consider our financial emissions rather than our own creation. But nevertheless, if you don't measure, you don't know. If you don't know, you cannot do. So measuring is very important. What we did, basically, we invested to some apps which have some algorithms which very nicely measures footprints in every sector. So it's a very complex issue. Which sector pollutes, and carbon emission and footprint, carbon footprint, how big? And there is a consensus across the world, to my best knowledge, still, so that everyone is agreeing upon. So we are investing through our venture capital, Deniz Venture Capital, to such sort of youngsters, new innovations with regard to measuring carbon footprints. So, and finally, sustainable finance framework. We recently launched a robust statement saying that no coal, we made such a statement, and we made our organization. It's like an octopus. It's spilled all around the subsidiaries of Denizbank and the bank itself. It's a matter that a collective wisdom and collective effort is must, so that you can achieve your goal. So we are doing our best. We have a lot of innovations on the micro lending on agriculture, but I don't want to keep it very long, to give some time to my colleagues. Maybe if we can do second round, I will keep telling them. Thank you.
Wonderful, and yes, I think we will have a bit more time, so we'll look forward to hear more. So, Brahim, I wanted to ask you, because we saw several years ago there was suddenly a flurry of net zero pledges by banks, and that was also then swiftly criticized because people didn't quite know how a bank would go from today to that net zero in 2050, let's say. So now we're seeing, for the maybe last 2 years or so, there seems to be a bit of a more silent trend, which is sort of the emergence of a transition plan, which is sort of filling that gap and really for a bank to lay out, how am I actually going to get there? How am I going to contribute to the low carbon economy by that time, which is still a little bit in the future? So I was just wondering, because I think you're thinking about establishing a transition plan for your bank. So could you maybe share something about that? How's it going to look like? What's the process to get there? What's going to be in it? Why are you doing it?
Yes, thank you very much first to having invited me on this panel. The path to Paris and the path to the zero carbon is history in the making in our case, and we are partnering with you, EBRD, in order to get to that. I think that the first choice is to consider that we should do things according to the best practices, to the international norms, and to do it progressively, and I would say pedagogically. First of all, we had to measure our direct impacts. We had to be credible in the way we're getting to that. First, measuring our direct impact. We started with scope 1 and 2. We have our carbon footprint since 2016. And of course, we're going to enlarge that to scope 3, i.e., we really want that we measure by good norms and metrics the impact of our activity by analyzing our portfolio, essentially the corporate portfolio, and essentially at this stage in Morocco, with the methodology of the science-based target, and getting to, I would say, first of all, maybe we will see, that's why I'm saying history is in the making, saying what will be the results from what we had up to now, is that beyond just carbon, we studied with the tool of UNEP-FI our corporate portfolio, and we already saw, and that's why I will talk about beyond the carbon. We saw that half of our portfolio has already a positive impact beyond carbon. So our path to Paris itself is our path to SDGs. We are now talking about the path to Paris, to how to get to carbon free. We consider that we'll have some choices to present, to suggest to our board, to our instances, in terms of adhering to the Net Zero Banking Alliance. But beforehand, we need to do it progressively, and that's why we're partnering with you, EBRD, and where this transition plan is being, and its each steps will be seen with our partners. We have hired also international consultancy firm in order to do things the right way. I think that here, in order to be once again credible, we have always to keep this double materiality. The first materiality about what we are doing for ourselves, what are our own emissions as a group, and then go to what we call the scope 3 and see the portfolio. So a lot of challenges indeed are ahead, essentially capacity building. That's why we absolutely praise the fact that the Central Bank of Morocco and EBRD have embarked on helping not only our bank, but all banks in terms of physical risk, in terms of transitional risk, training. This is very important. I think in Morocco we have a good context of a country which itself has a vision in terms of heading to decarbonization. It's a huge opportunity. We're not doing it. We started at the beginning being pioneers in terms of greening of finance and being, I would say, in the name of corporate social responsibility, we were pioneers. Now we're very happy to see that the whole country, the royal vision, the government vision is really to go into that. So decarbonization of the economy is something which is set as an objective for the whole country, and we intend to contribute significantly within that.
Amazing, thank you. And we're very excited about this collaboration, working with you on the transition plan, by the way. Jean, perfect timing. Perfect timing. I was just going to turn to you, and I'm glad you're actually here, so I don't have to make it up. Jean Boissinot, he is from the Central Bank in France, obviously, but you're also heading the Secretariat of the NGFS. And we're talking about how, of course, how we can get to this green financial system that we're all striving towards. So you have a very unique view, because you are in the NGFS, you see everything. You see everybody through all the different countries, regions, types of banks. So yeah, what's your view? How can we push this forward, and what are you going to focus on in the next few years?
Thanks, and my apologies for being late. Actually, we had a family breakfast of NGFS members uptown, and it took me longer than I expected to reach the session. I think it's actually not true that we see everything, but we see everybody at the center of everything, which I think is a bit different. So what we see is indirectly, basically, the big picture of the challenges and the opportunity across the world, because indeed, as you said, the NGFS, it's now 130 central banks and supervisors. So if you want an idea of the global reach of the network, it's about 85% of the GDP and 85% of the GHG emissions, which I think speaks to the challenge that we are collectively facing. I think over the past year, there was clearly a change in the way the supervisors were starting to look at the challenges, realizing that we really need to find a solution to being more forward-looking. And the answer to that quest for ensuring the forward-lookingness and making sure that we are not just shifting things around in balance sheets, but really very much accompanying the strategic shift to net zero. The name of that is actually transition plans and transition planning, obviously. So we provided the sandbox for everyone to start playing with the concept. And I say playing for a purpose, because for us it was not completely obvious what should be the role of a supervisor with regard to transition plans and transition planning. I think after a while we all realized that it was core to making sure that the banks and the financial institution, because it's also for the insurance companies, the pension funds and so on, develop a strategic perspective on the question. And it's very much part of, maybe it's not something that you grab immediately from a regulatory perspective, but it's actually core to the behavior of the institution. So a lot of interest on our side on that. Very happy that the FSB, the Basel Committee, EIS have all followed suit on that, and the NGFS as somehow a facilitator to that discussion has moved along to what we think is a very big challenge, which is most of the banks, they are international. And the transition in, let's say, Europe, and the transition in Southeast Asia, and the transition in Africa, they are all transitioned, but they don't look the same. And you should not expect basically a European bank to, or if we ended up in a place where European banks would be thinking about the transition in, let's say, Southeast Asia with the European lens, I think we would miss a lot of, we would make perhaps more damages than good. So the current thinking among the NGFS now is really on two things. How do we make sure that transition plans of banks do translate or do accommodate for, take into account the transition strategies of the country they are operating in. So that's one question. The other one is obviously more of let me put my supervisory hat on how to make sure that transition plans are credible, but not just credible, that they are actually executed. It's not you need to have a plan, but you need also to deliver on it. So that's something we are also starting to work with. But I also wanted to touch on one other point, which is something that we started to work in the NGFS initially with a bit of cautious, which was the questions of how we as central banks and supervisors can help a bit further in, for example, making sure that blended finance actually is scaling up to where it should be. Not completely obvious for us to come to that discussion, although because it's a discussion that has been going on for so long time that it was not quite clear that we would add to the conversation. But I think it was also good to make the supervisors and the central banks realize that they do have a role to play in that in basically fostering the ecosystem in which blended finance can thrive. After all, so very excited to see that the future is not just about making sure that the framework is right, but also making sure that there are speed lanes that you can go through.
Absolutely, and I think from all the central banks, maybe over to you, Hasmik. You are the central bank in Armenia. So how does that resonate with you? What do you think? How can we implement this? How do you see it? What's your work?
Thank you, Maya. It's a privilege and my pleasure to be here. It's my second experience within the Pathways to Paris with the EBRD, and a lot has happened to Armenia with the help of EBRD in this sphere. So central banks as a public policy making bodies implementing monetary policy and financial stability policies, and as a regulator have a powerful role to play in scaling up green finance and addressing environmental issues, thus contributing to the Paris alignment objectives and nationally determined contribution. So key aspects for the central banks, as Jean said, it's firstly it's about regulation, supervision, and risk management. And it's not enough not only to have frameworks, just to review whether there is an alignment with that framework, whether there is pathway to reach our objectives. So the central banks can play a crucial role in developing and implementing, as I said, and regulatory frameworks. And from the side of supervision and risk management, the central banks should accept from the board members of the commercial banks whether they assess in the environmental context the risks for their long-term plans, long-term business vision of their business regarding governance strategy. The other perspective from the central banks is stress testing and scenario analysis, and NGFS promotes this scenario analysis, and I think it's very important for the commercial banks, for financial market participants to get these scenarios, to have their own scenarios, to analyze and to assess the environmental and climate issues impact on their portfolios and their long-term plans. The other role of the central bank can be research and data collection. The central banks should contribute with the research, not only providing some scenarios, but also analyzing what the impact of the climate change should be in the, on the economy, on the structure of the economy, because it's an economic, it's a change in economic structure, so it will impact the financial stability also. And this involves collecting data on climate-related risks, and also the central banks must help to develop methodologies for analyzing this impact. In the Central Bank of Armenia, we are designing risk radars, heat maps by sectors, and we have designed it, communicated it with the banks, and now we are going to elaborate it by the regions of Armenia, because there are several levels of climate impact on the on the geography of Armenia. So the other important aspect is collaboration. The central bank should collaborate with financial institutions and international organizations to promote a coordinated approach to greening the financial system. And Armenia is the member of NGFS, and a lot of financial institutions, EBRD, IFC, are assisting us in that aspect. And I will not speak a lot about monetary policy, but about the asset management. The central bank can, reserve management, the central banks can invest in sustainable assets, sustainable bonds. And finally, that I want to speak about is capacity building. The central banks ought to, not should, not can, they ought to support the financial institutions with capacity building, providing training and guidance on integrating environmental considerations into decision-making processes. It's like, it can be like a cultural change, and cooperation, collaboration with international financial institutions is crucial in this aspect, because the central banks alone can't provide this insight of cultural change. So by actively engaging in these areas, I think that central banks can contribute in scaling up, greening the financial system and going to more sustainable economic growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Francis, some of our panelists have already given us some kind shout-outs to some of the support that we've been providing. Can you tell us a little bit more what the EBRD is doing currently to support on Paris alignment, transition planning?
Yes, so thank you, my dear friends, for all your kind words. And I think what we have here is an illustration of the work we try to do in our countries. There's a few important things. One is, of course, we work with pioneers, and my approach to pioneers, like the two we have on stage today, is you support them as much as you can. Okay, I didn't count $1 billion for Denizbank, but and I'm sure we are close to that number as well for Bank of Africa, and there's more to come. That's one, but it's not enough. And green financing is also not enough. When we set out to work on a financial sector strategy at EBRD, we realized that the lending we do into our financial sectors is a small proportion of the assets of that financial sector. It's between, let's say, 0.3% and 3% of that financial sector assets. So the big prize out there is not to double from 3 to 6%. It is to make 100% of the banking sector green. And to do that, you need partners that are willing to go green themselves, but you also need regulators that are willing to make the banking sector green. And we did a survey of our partner financial institutions. We work with around 350 in 36 economies. And about a third of the banks answered. The conclusions of the survey, it's available online, it's a couple of years ago, was number one, no one was ready. And you've made a lot of progress, but no one was ready at the time. A lot of banks working simply on exclusions rather than on integrating climate risk into their decision-making processes, which is now making progress. And the other thing that the banks told us is we need technical assistance. We want to do this, but we don't really know how to do this. And of course, some, like the pioneers, are more advanced than others, but by and large, banks need to develop that know-how. And the third thing that came out of that survey, and that's why it's so important to have the regulator on stage as well as in the game, is that banks listen to their IFI partners, certainly, but they listen to their regulator much more. So when the regulator starts saying, I want to see a climate stress test, the banks do it much more. And it creates also a level playing field. Because, of course, banks have this fear that if they are the more Catholic than the Pope, sorry, I know we have two banks from countries that are not necessarily Catholic on the stage, but more Catholic than the Pope on green, then they are going to lose competitively. So if the regulator says to everyone, you have to have the proper processes for green, then it becomes actually a competitive edge to be ahead rather than a competitive drag to be stricter than the competition. And so that's what we try to achieve. We work with regulators. We have 2 country-level programs, one in Armenia, the other in Morocco. And similar programs are planned in Turkey and Tajikistan next year. So working with the regulator to define the green standards for the financial sector. But also we work, of course, with banks. The primary aim of EBRD is to work with its private sector clients. And so by the end of 2023, we have 8 clients. So way to go, because out of 350, there's leaves some margin for improvement. But we have 8 pioneers that have agreements related to transition plans. We have developed an EBRD transition Paris alignment methodology, which we've aligned with the IFC so that we can recognize each other's work with our partner banks. And 2 of these clients actually receive technical assistance from us to achieve this. So it's not enough to work with one bank, you need to work at the system level, and that's what we are very happy to do together with the meta system, the NGFS, with the systems in places like Armenia. And when you mention training Hasmik, I can only encourage everyone to come to the EBRD annual meeting in Yerevan next year and make the trip a little bit north of Yerevan to a beautiful city called Dilijan, where the central bank has its training center, which is an absolutely impressive facility. So that's the way to go. Thank you.
Amazing. And yeah, you're right. How do we get from 8 to the 300? So one way of how we're thinking around that is by actually providing... You have an idea? Go for it.
From 8 to 300, I don't know, but from 8 to 130, it happened faster than you think. Yeah, that's the NGFS experience.
That's the NGFS journey in the scope of very few years, indeed. Yeah, so the way we're thinking about doing this is now actually to bring more banks together in a cohort and help them with the capacity building. And surprise, surprise, the first country we did this was Armenia. So I'm going to hand back to you, Hasmik, because you already mentioned capacity building. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the program, how your banks are viewing it, and yeah. What do you think? Is it important? Does it make sense?
Yeah, thank you, Maya. A couple of months ago, the Central Bank of Armenia and the EBRD launched a capacity building program, as already said. It's about transition planning. It's quite targeted and it is phased, so it makes the capacity building program efficient. I spoke to my colleagues from commercial banks, not only in the central bank. They are very happy with this interactive format of the capacity building. So we have already had 2 events and at least approximately 10 events will happen during 2000 up to the end of the 2024. And the stakeholders are the central bank and financial market participants. So, for my view, from my point of view, the importance of capacity building is the facilitation of strategic planning for long term. Financial institutions in Armenia and all over the world need to consider sustainability factors in their overall business strategy, and this capacity building is on point. Secondly, capacity building will ensure that individuals within the organizations have the necessary expertise and knowledge to navigate in the complexities of scaling up sustainable finance. Capacity building is important for decision making also. It empowers decision makers within financial institutions to make informed choices that align with sustainability principles. And this includes understanding the risks connected with ESG factors, incorporating the sustainability, knowledge about the sustainability in investment decisions, overall financial stability. Also, compliance and risk management is very important within the growing emphasis on sustainability, the financial regulations, ensuring compliance with existing emerging standards is very important. And what is the most important is this cultural shift from traditional financial practices to more sustainable financial principles. And it's like a change of mindset. I told about it. And with the help of the trainings, the capacity buildings helps people to become more socially responsible. So the transition planning, which is the capacity building program about, is a dynamic process. It's about collaboration, adaptability, commitment, and we want to be sure that our institutions have this knowledge, skills, and culture to go to more sustainable financial practices, to comply with the TCFD, this climate-related financial disclosures, to comply with international best practices. And by the end of this capacity building program, we expect good guidelines for the financial market participants for the transition plan. Hope for better results next year this time. Thank you.
Definitely. Jean, we've mentioned the transition plan a few times now. You also alluded to the work that NGFS is doing on it, and you said it needs to be credible. So what makes a good transition plan?
I think the jury's still out. But I'm literally just out because as you know, the NGFS has been producing first reports that also served as a basis for the Basel Committee, the FSB, the EIS, IOSCO to leverage on in their own work, and we're certainly not going into the standard setting dimension of it. That's really for the SSBs to do. But among the follow-ups, there is indeed this question of how to make what a credible transition plan should look like. And the work is happening as we speak. So I won't prejudge about it. But let's say that I think the feeling that I have from hearing people around the table discussing the issue is that it's really seen. I mentioned the strategic dimension before. That's clearly an very important dimension. There is also the issue of how that is a way to make sure that we avoid greenwashing, because we in the past, we had greenwashing with the present and past. Now we can have greenwashing with the future. So transition plans can be both a new area where greenwashing is happening, but it can also be a way to make sure that when we are taking commitments, because it is credible, because it is substantiated, and so on, this is indeed an anti-greenwashing tool. So that's part of my answer. I don't know. But there's something else maybe to add to the conversation, is that a number of NGFS members are actually starting to consider their own transition plans. Because we've seen that when it was about typically sustainable investment for central banks, we learned so much by doing it ourselves. And people think that it's also a good, obviously, central banks tend to be mindful of its leadership and exemplarity, so it's part of that. But it's also part of the journey of learning what are the difficult things around that. And I must say that perhaps it's even more difficult for a central bank to think about its own transition than for a commercial bank, because a commercial bank does not print banknotes, for example. and be it as you, maybe you don't realize, but for central banks, this may be one of the biggest part of their carbon footprint, for example. So really trying to make it work, trying to have the banks deliver on it, making sure that this is indeed an anti-greenwashing device rather than a new area for greenwashing, but also being mindful of learning it the hard way to make sure that when we come to the banks, we also have some credibility to ask for more.
And Francis, when we think about transition planning, all of these things, they only make sense if we reach the real economy, right? So this is what we eventually want to achieve, is not necessarily just to decarbonize the banks, but really to decarbonize the real economy. And for that, the money needs to reach the real economy. So in terms of products, what do you see as the next frontier in green products? How can we help innovate our clients?
We can, one thing we need to make sure of is that we encourage banks to remove CO2 out of the atmosphere rather than simply remove CO2 out of their balance sheets. Because today the system is such that you can make a lot of progress by essentially selling polluting assets to others who do not have the same sort of public pressure that the people on the stage have. So removing CO2 should count if it's removed out of the atmosphere. Now, we have a lot of products in EBRD focused on the real economy, and we've deployed them in many of our countries. So I think the name of the game for these products is to continue doing them, is to continue simplifying them. So for example, I have here the app that we created to support green lending. So it's simply every client in the country,
Green Technology Selector,
can go and you download it on the App Store. And you can select products that are available in your country from local suppliers and from international suppliers, and you know that these products are eligible for EBRD finance. So you get rid of the need for a consultant to come and check that you've implemented the proper windows and the proper whatever, and it goes from tractors to air conditioners to, so it's products both for individuals and for SMEs. And I think the name of the game for SMEs in the emerging markets is really simplification. The other name of the game is tailoring. I think we're going to move away from broad scope green financing lines in the future to develop specialized lines, for example, for sustainable agriculture, for example, for small municipalities, for small renewables and so on and so forth, because I think that's going to be also able to make our partner banks able to differentiate themselves by offering real value-added, high value-added services to their own clients. And then, of course, the third element is the development of green capital markets. Developing green bonds and other capital markets instruments that are green is not only essential, but is a way to leverage the funding that IFIs can give. We alone don't have the capital required for the green transition. If we don't get the private sector to play ball on this, we're all going to burn. So we have to have the private sector in the game, and one of the best ways to do this is to do it with capital markets products.
Yeah, Brahim, you seem to be in full agreement, and you've been very active, obviously, also in the area of green products. So what's your experience?
Yes, indeed. I mean, we're talking about a successful transition plan, and that would be, for us commercial banks, something that will be profitable mainstream of commercial banking business or capital market business, and profitable. And I think it will be. But innovation is absolutely also, in my opinion, the name of the game. And I think we touched upon this kind of innovation through what was called this blended finance. Blended finance, something that won't be only outright finance, but something which goes with technical assistance, with, to a certain point, yes, if there were some grants, some subsidy, something which will alleviate the constraint of the cost sometimes in order to make of the products attractive. There are a lot of challenges indeed. Maybe you said, Francis, indeed, standardization at the same time, tailor-made, something products which could indeed look like, I would say, the business as usual products. I'm sure the more we are looking like the mainstream, the more our commercial forces will be able to sell and convince our customers to go forward. Because otherwise, I mean, if the private sector like ourselves, i.e. the corporate sector, is not involved through this kind of product. One of the things indeed are, for example, something that we're looking like with you, EBRD, is this sustainability-linked loans. Loans that will be based on the meeting of some criteria, be they the reduction of energy consumption, be they the gender criteria, etc. This is something, and you said, Francis, indeed, capital markets. We were in 2016 the first in Morocco and probably also in the region to issue a green bond. Yes, indeed. I mean, once again, once we convinced the whole financial markets that greening will be something which is not, how could I say, something which has to be mainstream in the ultimate interest of the whole humanity. And that means that we should push forward this private sector to understand that taking into account, in the name of the ESG criteria, where the E wouldn't be only environment but also ethics, the S wouldn't be only social but also the community, and G, governance. And having that, that's why I said earlier that the path to Paris is in how could I say, in a highway which will be a path to a SDG. Having this mindset prevailing more and more within the private sector will help, I'm sure, not only the greening financial sector, but beyond that, going to a finance which has a sense, an ultimate sense, to be given not only to the bankers in order to tell them what you're doing is also doing good. You're doing business and you're doing good at the same time, and you're making profitable, it has to be profitable, but you're making a collective profitability of the whole community.
Yeah, Hakan, you've already alluded also to your work in product innovation. You've talked about agribusiness sector, etc. What's your experience to date?
Yes, thank you, Maya. Indeed, both Mr. Jean and Mr. Francis stated that it's time to deliver. Yes, we need to promise something, and afterwards we have to do. But there are some impediments. It's what we call hard to abide. It's not easy to give up right away. It's a matter of transition. Nevertheless, you have to put the pillars and the pinpoints and the milestones in place at first place. For instance, what we have done, Denizbank is the first bank who became a member of PKF in Turkey. And we introduced, firstly, KPIs for securing food safety in agriculture, some KPIs to our syndicated loan facilities. And basically, we recently launched a robust future-fit sustainable finance framework, which enforces our commitment to create measurable and material impact, especially in our niche sectors. And for instance, let me give you an example. Out of $4.2 billion, which we raised after shareholdership of Emirates National Bank of Dubai, because I'm the founder CEO since 27 years. Francis knows my journey since 97, and we changed 4 shareholders. But basically, one of the host country is Dubai, and EBRD is here, and we raised $4.2 billion, out of which $2.1 billion is just deployed for sustainability. This is a big plus, I believe. Next to that, yes, you're right. On the private sector, we tap more than 1/3 of the agribusiness, especially on micro-lending. And it does matter, especially for inclusivity and connectivity measures, taking into account proximity. What we have done, basically, we innovated producer's card, and it copied afterwards with the public banks after us. And now there are 550,000 farmer families, representing almost 50% of the overall bankable farmers in the country, that they can access to gasoline, to chemicals, food, fertilizers, seeds, all kinds of ingredients of agribusiness economy can be obtained and procurement can be made by this card. The average size is $2,000, $5,000 only, but it enables them to turn around their economy. Therefore, and with an app we supported it, what we call From Sea to Soil. Sea means Deniz. My name is Sea in English. It's Deniz. And Sea to Soil. The farmer can see what harm or what are the main weather conditions exactly on their field. They can ask to the engineer what this bug is by a photo of the bug to be sent by their phone. Cell phone is fair enough to run their business, to use their producer's card to make their procurements for the necessary ingredients of the agribusiness. So all in all, I do believe that it is a wonderful product that we brought up, and we are very, as EBRD knows very well, we are more than happy, we will be more than happy to copy-paste it to other countries, give our know-how, whatever we have in hand. And the support of EBRD, once again, I would like to underline it bold, is very crucial. Not only lending money, but educating people. It's all about creating an awareness and to educate people for a common effort. Unless there is common effort, we cannot reach to the end. And, you know, it's a matter of to be or not to be, to me. It's a survival matter. So that's what we have done so far with regard to sustainability. Thank you.
Very impressive. And we are getting to the end, but I would like to, before we close, I would like to do one quick fire round. You each have not more than 20 seconds to answer. What are your expectations from this year's COP? Starting from here, and we'll go around.
Yes, these are very useful associations and bringing all the globe together, which is very important. But the only thing I would like to say is that we shouldn't pretend as we are doing something. We have to do something, not for our children, for ourselves.
Okay, I think so.
This one is yours.
Okay, thank you. I will speak on a micro level as a regulator. Our expectations from COP. It's the urgency of collecting and reporting data about the sustainability and building competency to address the risks and to overcome all these difficulties towards sustainable finance and raise business attractiveness in the region. So it was in micro level. Thank you.
Thank you. We have listened to pledges given by head of states in terms of multiplying by 3, I think, renewables and all the pledges. So this is a good thing. But we, as private sector, for example, attending this kind of event is probably, meeting people looking like us, but also having the means to reinforce the ecosystem that we have to have around us, because finance, once again, couldn't be only outright finance. Partnership at its heart, capacity building, blending finance, these are the names of the game. So if this participation helps get some results out of these objectives, that our job will have been done. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Look, I think this what I expect to see this year is progress towards the notion that we're all in this together. I saw the signing of this agreement about damage fund, and that is a huge progress. I know it's not entirely funded, but I hear a lot of countries saying, "Oh, we're not responsible for global warming. Why should we make the effort?" And a lot of countries that are responsible for global warming saying, "Why should we pay? Why should our taxpayers have to pay?" I think this mindset is leading us right into the wall. And I hope that this COP takes us a little bit away, a few steps away from that mindset.
Tough question, and tough to be the last one to take the floor. I would say that if I have one wish for the COP, it would be for I think the negotiator to better understand what's happening here. And I'm speaking 8 years after Paris. We are at a time where people are really debating the role that the financial sector can play into that. But what I see from an NGFS perspective is really the growing momentum and the transformative momentum that is happening. And it's not, maybe 3 years ago I would have said it's a good wish, but now I see it happening on the ground. So I wish really people up there, they do realize that the world is changing fast, and this is changing the way they can implement a number of things. So let's hope that this momentum, goodwill on this end is being leveraged on the other.
Absolutely. Amazing. Thank you so much to this wonderful panel. Thank you so much to you here in the room for coming to listen to us. Thank you to those that are listening maybe over the live stream. And round of applause for these panelists. Thank you.